Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Construção, your number one podcast on civil engineering topics. My name is Victor Lima. With me as my co-host is Giovanna Martins. And today is our 51st episode, in which we discuss the impact of digitalization on planning and design in industrialized construction.
Today we have Civil Engineer Beda Barkokebas with us. He graduated from the Polytechnic School of the University of Pernambuco and holds a master's degree from the University of Alberta, Canada. In Brazil, he worked in project coordination, budgeting, and the implementation of BIM tools in the state of Pernambuco. As a pioneer in the field, Beda has successfully implemented BIM tools in the execution and planning of vertical residential buildings and shopping centers since 2010. He is currently pursuing a PhD at the University of Alberta, actively involved in modular construction companies and developing tools for cost control, as well as producing projects in Brazil, Canada, and United States.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Giovanna. And with that said, Beda, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, personal experiences, a little bit of your background, something that we may have skipped?
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you again for having me again. So just to, because I think maybe I sent you my outdated bio. So I finished my PhD at the University of Alberta, and I'm a professor and an assistant professor at the Pontifícia Universidade Católica de Chile. Yeah. So that was, yeah, so I started here around a year and a half ago. So I currently reside in Santiago de Chile. And yeah, so basically my story starts in Recife in Brazil. Graduated in civil engineering and started working there with industrialized systems such as aluminum formwork for social housing, steel structures, light steel frame panels, and etc. But then I decided that I wanted to work in factories that build houses. Fortunately, we don't have those factories in my area, in my region in Brazil. So I decided to move to Canada to start working in those type of construction, where I started my master's at the University of Alberta, and quickly started working there as well with construction companies. After that, I decided to go back to university to do my PhD, where I also worked in construction and also in consulting in both Canada and Brazil. In Brazil, I work with companies such as Tec Verde and CMC, which I'm still working as a consultant. And more lately, I moved to Chile to be an assistant professor here at the UC Chile, or Pontifícia Universidade Católica de Chile, and where I'm doing this for a year and a half, and also working with the local industry here around industrialized construction.
All right, yeah, quite a journey. So thank you so much for the update and for the contextualization. And now that we know a little bit of our guest, let's know a little bit more of our topic. So I will do a little contextualization for us. So industrialized construction involves transforming the construction site into an assembly line, focusing on the use of prefabricated systems that arrive on site ready to be installed. This construction method optimizes time and reduces execution time while ensuring high quality due to more rigorous production controls. With the fourth industrial revolution, digitalization of construction processes is a major focus of new technology research. Digitalization allows for real-time information sharing, ensuring transparency, integration, and easier quality control. So here we are left with a few questions like how does it translate to the practice? What are the challenges and opportunities in applying theme construction industry? And that's what we're going to be discussing today. And now I'll leave the floor for Giovanna to ask the first question. Giovanna, go ahead.
Well, so Beta, can factors like process, product, variability be controlled with the industrialization?
First, there is in construction we have, well, not in construction, in any type of business, you have something really bad, which is variability. Yeah. So uh, if if you buy something that you think is gonna cost you 10 reais, and at the end it costs you 20 reais, you lost 10 reais. If you thought it would cost 10 reais and it ended up costing 5 reais, it's good. You have more money in your pocket, but this is also not entirely good because you could be investing this money somewhere else, those 5 reais somewhere else, right? Uh, so the industrial approach, a manufacturing approach to business aims exactly to reduce that. So that's what Ford did, that's what Toyota did, and so forth. So basically, you don't have a variable product, right? So and you know when you're gonna get the product that you're aiming for. In construction, we have variability on both, a lot of variability on both ends. First one is a product. So every project, so I'm pretty sure that you guys heard this somewhere else, that every construction project is different. In the sense that the product itself is different. So the building that I'm working right now was not replicated somewhere else. And at the same time, we have a labor that if it rains, it's not going to produce as much. If people show up or don't show up, the project is not going to produce as much during that day, and so forth. So industrialization comes to play in construction exactly to reduce that, to not reduce, to eliminate that, but also to reduce that to a degree that your processes can be, that your business can be more predictable. Does, does that answer your
Makes
question?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Oh,
All right, and still in this topic, Beta, which new technologies are being employed in order to reduce this variability? Which technologies have you been seeing recently that are a key in order to cut this variability in half, pretty much?
okay, so are we talking technologies on the construction effort side, or in technology on the for IT IT side?
Focusing on the construction industry, construction sites.
Sure. So, well, first of all, new is relative in construction. So basically, for instance, we talk. I'm going to go back to construction, but for instance, we talk a lot about BIM, about the innovation of BIM. BIM actually has been applied by the aerospace industry since the 60s, right? Construction, like I'm talking about the application of parametric design. You know, the aerospace industry does this since the 60s. We started doing this from the 2000s, right? So just to clear this out, so for instance, you have a lot of new systems coming up or being rebranded or being modified to meet those demands. So for instance, steel structures, wood. Actually, the wood industry has been innovating quite a lot over the past decade, over the past years with glue lamp, COT, which are wood-based products that are being more sophisticated, that are becoming more and more sophisticated. But at the same time, we have less frame panels, we have new connections that are accelerating a lot the fabrication side and also the installation on site. But again, when I say that new is relative in construction, is that we have light steel frame constructions being done, you know, in the at the Empire State building that was built between 1927 to 1929, right? But those systems are also evolving to become more and more effective and also to comply with different requirements. So, for instance, Nowadays, is not you cannot conceive a building that does not meet, for instance, in Brazil, that does not meet the code 15.575, the forgot the name now, norma de desempenho. So that 20 years ago, you could design a building with a lot of inefficiencies on the acoustic side that nowadays you cannot. So the construction systems are evolving as well as the requirement that society holds to construction.
All right. Yeah, I really like the idea of new is relative. That's something that coincidentally we always talk to each of our guests because we are focusing on an international public, but we always compare international construction industry and then the Brazilian one. And what is new here is something that has been employed in other countries for many years. So I really like that you brought that up, and I think that I can leave the space for Giovanna to ask the next question.
Well, I want to know when we talk about industrialized construction, we often want it to succeed. When you do something, you want it to succeed. What is the role of the collaborators in the success of this industrialization process?
The collaborators, like the stakeholders in the project.
Yes.
Perfect. So, well, industrialized construction is by nature yeah, it has a multidisciplinary nature. Said that, at the same time that I have to design a wall, like the wall that is behind me, for instance, right? That is usually designed to be built on site. I can design the same wall in a very efficient setting, but at the same time I have to transport that. So this wall has to fit into a truck. So the knowledge that a structural engineer has is not enough to know exactly how I'm gonna transport this wall from my shop floor to my truck. From the truck, I have to ensure that this wall is not damaged, and then crane and lift this wall to the third floor to be installed here. So at the same time that I need the structural engineer to sign on, I need the my manufacturing guy to know how to tell me how long it's gonna take to fabricate that. I need to know about the logistics guy to how to transport that. And I need to know about the site guy to know how am I going to receive this panel, install that on site. So just by a one wall example in 2 minutes, we have four different persons. Like we have four different people that I need knowledge from the fourth of them in order to accomplish installing this wall in a successful manner. So industrialized construction, you have it makes this more explicit because I have shorter times, I have a higher risk, and then I need to talk more.
So you believe the process of industrialization actually brings more collaborators in the process to have specific knowledge of each step?
I would say that's a necessity. Unfortunately, not everyone in the industry thinks like that, but that's where we start losing money. But in my opinion, it's a higher necessity um, to collaborate when you're dealing with prefabrication than when you're not.
Thank you, David. It's very interesting thing.
And Beta, for a different question here, talking about continuous improvement. There are three ideas that I think are correlated with continuous improvement. I would like to know how important they are for that. So, when you're talking about data indicators, digital immersion, and real time information, which role do they play in continuous improvement?
Well, first, I think continuous improvement deals with people. So that's the before you talk about data, before you talk about real time, before you talk about digitalization, people has to be at the center of that, right? Because uh, like we're using artificial intelligence more and more, but I assure you, it's not gonna be a robot it's not gonna be ChatGPT that's gonna be framing a wall, right? So people is at the core of has to be the core of everything. Uh, where digitalization and where real-time information can play a fundamental part in that is that people can have information, can have more, can have a large amount of information and a more and a better quality of this information way faster. So this way they can perform. So this way they can make way more informed decisions. And the power of having an informed decision against having your own opinion about a problem can be huge, right? That's where I would think that real-time data and digitalization plays an important role in continuous improvement. At the same time, you also need you can benefit from digital methods also to do better evaluations. So if I'm drawing, if I'm planning my project in 2D, that's okay. Yes, it is okay. Unfortunately, life is in 3D. So if you design something in 3D, chances are that you're going to be predicting how that's going to hold up in the future better, right? So also, in a nutshell, for people, considering people has to be at the center of everything. Why? First, to make more and better informed decisions, and two, to evaluate better the processes and the product.
Yeah, I really like the idea that you brought because we always reach an ambiguity when we think of innovation. Because usually, when people think of innovation, people think of the automation of everything. So, leaving the human being behind and making the robot do everything. And as you said, that's not really something that it's the core of a whole immersion, a whole process to improve the construction industry. We need people working well with the new technologies, not instead of the technologies, not in place of the technologies. So I think that's a really great idea that you brought up. And Giovanna, please keep going.
I'm sorry, can I just complement with one example?
Please go ahead.
So, instance, I'm used to develop design workflows, automating steps. Yeah, so basically, I do a lot of plugins in Revit, for instance, to automate design tasks, right? And I'm used to, and this is documented in different publications of mine, that you can reduce time in around 40 to 60% of the design process, right? By automating design process using artificial intelligence to do that and etc. And that's documented. That's measured. That's verified. That's measured, and it's published. Um, if you ask me, how much of this, which activities I remove from the designers that relates to their expertise, I would say none. Everything, all the time that I save, that my tools save, they're not touching the expertise of the designer. They're touching the repetitive work they have to do. So quantity takeoffs, revising checking if the newest version of the design is contemplating, like, so the structural engineer changed something. What are the changes? Verifying if all the information in the BIM model is available. All those clerical tasks, those are the tasks that are eliminated. So this way, the designer, he can actually do what he does best, which is not counting how many windows there are, and it's not verifying if the size of the windows changed or not, but also what is the best connection of what is the best type of window that would relate that could be used at an admissible cost. Because what I do, I integrate a lot of cost database with the B model. So if you have information about how much, so if I change a window and I know automatically how much it costs, right? I'm not eliminating the designer's expertise. I'm just expediting his work, right?
Yeah, and just as we've seen the computer era, once computers started being used, they were being used not to replace workers, but as a tool to make people work faster, work better. And now AIs should have the same role as computers once had, improving the work someone does, not replacing the work someone does. So I really think that's a great idea that we need to think forward in order to improve construction as a whole. So thank you so much for the example. I think that it made very clear for our listeners what we're really talking about. And Giovanna, please go ahead with our next question.
Well, talking a little bit back to the collaboration that we talked. One point that's really important in all those processes that was so revolutionary of BIM in the construction industry was the collaboration and the transparency, that we can share the information more easily and integrate the processes. How do you believe we can digitalize the process to share information in real time in a way to promote transparency and a better collaboration, improving the agility of the work?
Yeah, that's a tough question. So what I think is this. I think so far we haven't changed the way we work. We just made it faster. And I can give another example about that. So my grandfather, he was an engineer. He was a civil engineer. Okay. And when he passed away, we were checking. We were like he was from a time that he had a small construction company. He would design the building. He would design. He would calculate the building. He would build the building. So he would do everything. I'm talking about the 50s here, right? Um, and that's okay. And I checked his notes. So the process, the design process, like to calculate the structures was, okay, I have this load, the floor, the slab, that slab goes into this direction, um, the load gets transferred to the beam transfers the load to the column transfers the load to the foundation transfers the load to the soil, and if everything is okay, the building stands still, right? I'm pretty sure you guys had a design course that is exactly the same thing, right? My grandfather, he did the exact same thing in the 50s. What did it change? Now we're using SAP. So we have the floor plan, the architectural floor plan. We model that into SAP, into Eberic, any structural software, right? And in a very simplistic way, the software is going to do exactly this. What did it change? Like, what changed in the design process here? In its nature, basically nothing. We made it faster, right? The change that I'm starting to see, like, you see this in in academic forums is that you can use, for instance, generative design. So instead of drawing something, you give the software parameters, and the software will find, based on those parameters, will model the most optimum solution based on those parameters. So I'm starting to play with this but I am an academic, so you can find applications of that in industry, but that's not mainstream, right? So I like the direction that this is going, but and that's just my opinion. I don't think that on a grand scale we'll reach there. So I think up to today, so if we call a structural engineer today and say, please calculate my building, I'm pretty sure he's going to be way more closer to what my grandfather did in the 50s than what I just described. Make sense? So I'm sorry if I'm being too pessimistic here, but I think I think our generation, our generation is gonna, at least I like to think that. I think our generation, the time that we're living now, we're gonna see this inversion point. Maybe in the next 10, 20 years, we're gonna see the switch flipping. But I personally don't think the design process, for instance, changed significantly in its nature over the past 50 years. I think it's faster. I agree that it's faster. It's definitely faster, right? You guys know how, for instance, you guys know how you would copy and paste a floor plan from one place to the other back in the day. You would hire an intern to draw it.
Oh my God, by hand?
Yes. Look, in the 50s there were no computers.
Yeah.
How do you think those drawings went to the construction site? Someone drew them. You know what I mean? So the way to copy and paste something back in the day were, so yes, the construction industry had way more people, way more interns, but doing repetitive work, not necessarily putting applying their knowledge into the design. Make sense?
It does. It's a really
Yeah.
interesting process. I agree. It's not just because we have the technology and the means that it will actually make a change. It takes time for the people to adapt, for overgrow their fears as well of the change and all this perspective. It's really interesting thinking about it.
Yeah, I do have an interesting anecdote to that. So I heard about the first architectural firm in Recife. I'm from Recife. Uh, they threw a party when so it was the first plotter in Pernambuco. So they threw a party. So it was a big architectural firm. I think it's still there. It was in the 80s. So if you think about, imagine before this plotter, what was the job of the interns? It was pretty much drawing, which is, I'm pretty sure that you guys, I would hate to do that. And I'm pretty sure that's unthinkable for you guys to even do something like that, right?
Even in school, we don't do a lot of drawing. We have some classes, but not a lot. It
You should
focuses
learn
with
to draw. Look,
bocage, all these kinds of drawing.
I agree, but I also had 2 or 3 drawing courses in civil engineering. I think I had 2, but I work with automation, with Industry 4.0, all of that. But I would argue that you guys need to know how to draw, because on the construction side, a foreman, he's not gonna wait for you to go to the computer to draw something, print something. He's gonna need that right now. So I do tell my students to learn how to draw by hand as well. Fair enough. Just a quick
Yeah.
tip.
Yeah, it's a great tip because usually we think that innovation is leaving the paper, so leaving all the skills related to doing stuff by hand. Usually you think that a person that is great at their job is great at using all the automation and tools at their disposal, but in the real life, once you go to the construction site, I think that changes slightly because you really need to do everything on the spot. If a problem pops up, you don't have the time to do some research and ask people out. You have to know how to handle it. And then I think it goes with that idea of being able to draw, being able to do stuff by yourself, not using the tools that we've been discussing here. Exactly, great example. Great example.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
also have this as well. But I also have this as well. Or depending on what I need,
Hmm.
you
Exactly.
you
It's
have to know how
also
to use both.
Yeah, it's great to use the digital notebooks, for example, but grabbing a pen and paper and writing it by hand is faster. I wouldn't say it's more effective, but I think it's faster because we're used to it ever since we're little. So I think we need to be able to work with both. And
Yeah.
and and better in this topic of all this digitalization that we've been discussing now, just a general question, just to clarify stuff for our listeners. Can you tell us a little bit of how digitalization can be implemented in the construction process, in the industrialized construction process, in some examples?
Okay, so for instance, my first job is as a I'm gonna give you a very basic example. My first job as a construction intern uh, was pretty much measuring what every worker did on daily basis, so they can get paid for their production at the end of the month, and verify and doing quality control checks. So basically, if they installing the ceramic properly, if they building the wall correctly according to the ISO 9000, ISO 9000 with ficha de verificação de serviço, that stuff. And all of that was made by hand, right? So you have a sheet. I would work with a sheet and do all of that. Nothing wrong with that. It worked. The company is still there. People got paid. There's nothing wrong with that. My question to you, like, but back, like, I still think about how much data, how much information I had, which didn't transform itself in data. If we were doing that on a tablet, if I were doing that, doing, if I'm doing that on a platform or a tablet, or if I'm, even though I didn't have we didn't have tablets back then. I'm talking about 2009. So tablets, they were very expensive at that time. 2009, yes, 2009. My company could tell me, look, you do your hand notes on 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 paper, but at the end of the month you need to fill up this an Excel sheet, right? Something like that. The company could have, for their own records and for continuous improvement, what is the likelihood of like which services they were having the most mistakes. They could have statistics about what was the advance on each type of service, what is the quality check, how likely is for you to have bad compliance, on average, how much people would make money or not, just for having this in a digital setting, just for having this in an Excel spreadsheet, right? So this is, you don't need to you don't need to install sensors. You don't need to like, yes, you can install sensors. You can do a lot of very good stuff with sensors, but I really recommend you to start with, I just get the data, just get the information that you usually get, and transform that into data that can be later used for continuous improvement on the project level or the company level.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sorry if I spoke too much. Did I answer the question
yeah,
or?
absolutely. Yeah, it's the idea of taking it step by step, not trying to skip any steps in the process, because sometimes we try to be overachiever, but we don't achieve anything by doing that all the time. So I really think that's a great example. So thank you so much, Beta. And Giovanna, please, for a final question.
Well, lastly, I want to focus a little bit on Brazil and ask you to imagine with me Brazil in 10 years. What do you think the digitalization in industrialized construction will be like in the projects in Brazil in 10 years? Do you think it's a positive, do you have a positive vision of this future? Do you think Brazil will have a significantly evolution in this area or not so much?
Well, I think the market for industrial construction in Brazil is growing. So if you see, for instance, you see big groups now investing heavily in industrialization. You have new companies coming up every year, factories, bigger factories opening up, which I think 5, 10 years ago was not the case. So you have a bigger interest in that. I think the digitalization. So, for instance, how much digitized the processes are and etc. I don't know if that's gonna change much because nowadays, if you're if you're fabricating something on the shop floor, chances are that you're doing a much more detailed design than a traditional counterpart. And today that's very niche, and not a lot of people know how to do that. So I don't know if that's gonna. So I don't know on that end if that's gonna evolve in the sense of having more and more and more sophisticated systems. But I think more because the market is gonna increase, more people are gonna be doing that. But I think one or two companies are gonna get really fancy with that, get really sophisticated with that. But I don't. But I think that's gonna be on the company level, not on the industry level. I think on the industry level, we're gonna have more people doing it because the market is increasing.
Again, I believe that's a very interesting thing. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. If we have less workers but using more technology, do we improve or not the market representation? It's a very interesting way to think about it. Thank you so much. Your presence here was amazing, and thank you for your participation and your answers.
Yeah, Beta, once again, thank you so much. This was our final question. That's pretty much what we wanted to discuss over with you. But please, we would like to give you the floor for a final message for our Brazilian listeners, international listeners, something for them to think about for over the week about the topic from today.
Well, once again, thank you very much for inviting me again. Uh, I, I think it was a very different interview from back then because I was a very different person during that time. Um, I don't know because the internet is forever, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to change. This that I'm a professor and I'm always in the need for good graduate students. So if anyone's listening that's interested in doing a master's or PhD or doing any sort of research in industrialized construction, please give me a call. Please Google me on my LinkedIn or the university's website, and please reach out to me because I'm always in need for good students.
Yeah, I'm sure that the two hosts here are very, very interested in that invitation and probably many of our listeners. So, Beta, once again, thank you so much. And Giovanna, please wrap it up for us.
Well, for those interested in learning more about innovations in civil construction, listen to our 44th episode with Professor Patricia Tuzopoulos, discussing Industry 5.0, learning about the advantages of this revolution.
Once again, thank you so much, Professor. And for those who are still here with us, if you'd like to check any other information over Beta or any other guests that we've had, just follow us on our social media at inconstrução.ufg, and we'll see you in the next episode. So, guys, this was
Em construção.
your number one podcast on civil engineering topics. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye bye. Thank
Bye.
you.